You know what's beautiful about justice? Sometimes it doesn't arrive with sirens and handcuffs. Sometimes it walks into a room on quiet feet, wearing faded jeans and a knowing smile. Sometimes it's 70 years old and doesn't need to raise its voice. This is a story about a man who confused volume for power, muscles for strength, and spectacle for substance. His name was Derek, the demolisher Kane, and he was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life from a teacher he should have respected. Because when you spend your whole career building a tower of arrogance, it only takes one gentle push from the right person to watch the whole thing come crashing down. And that person, he was sitting in the corner of a Dallas gym, not looking for trouble, not looking for glory, just looking for a place to work out in peace. But peace, as you'll see, was the last thing Derek Kane was willing to give him. The Texas sun hammered down on the worn, asphalt-outside Iron Legacy gym, like it had something to prove. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of leather, sweat, and decades of dreams, some realized, most abandoned. This wasn't one of those chrome and mirror fitness palaces, where people came to be seen. This was a real gym, the kind where the equipment had history, where the walls had absorbed 1,000 grunts and groans, where serious people came to do serious work. Chucknorris pushed through the door at exactly 6 in the morning, just like he had 3 times a week for the past 2 years. At 70, he moved with a deliberateness that younger men mistook for slowness. But it wasn't slow. It was economical, precise. Every movement had purpose, nothing wasted. His white hair was neatly trimmed, his eyes clear and alert. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and black workout pants, nothing fancy, nothing branded. He didn't need a billboard on his chest to tell people who he was. Marcus, the gym's owner, looked up from behind the front desk and broke into a warm smile. "Morning, Chuck. Your corner's waiting for you." "Morning, Marcus. Coffee smells good today." Chuck made his way to the back corner of the gym, where a heavy bag hung from reinforced chains and a small mat provided just enough space for his routine. He liked this spot. It was away from the main traffic, quiet, functional. He wasn't here to make friends or impress anyone. He was here because the body, like a blade, needed to stay sharp. He began his warm-up with gentle stretches, listening to his body, respecting its limits while gently pushing its boundaries. Age had taught him patience. When he was younger, he'd attacked workouts with fury and pride. Now at 70, he understood that consistency beat intensity, that showing up mattered more than showing off, that the real battle wasn't against anyone else but against the version of yourself that wanted quit. The gym began to fill as the morning wore on. The regulars nodded to Chuck with genuine respect. They knew he was, of course. Everyone did. But they also knew he came here for the same reason they did. To work, to sweat, to be a little better than yesterday. And they loved him for not making a big deal about it, for not holding court or demanding attention. Around 9 o'clock, the atmosphere in the gym shifted. Chuck noticed it immediately, the way you notice a change in air pressure before a storm. The front door banged open, and a voice, loud, brash, dripping with theatrical confidence, announced itself before its owner fully entered. "Yo, where's everybody at? Y'all ready to see what a real athlete looks like?" Derek Kane had arrived. He was impossible to miss. 6'5", 270 pounds of chemically enhanced muscle wrapped in neon green compression gear that looked like it had been painted on. His hair was bleached platinum, styled in a way that required more product than most people use in a month. Tattoos crawled up both arms, dragons, skulls, flames, all the cliches. A camera crew trailed behind him, 2 young guys with expensive equipment capturing every moment for Derek's social media empire. Derek, the demolisher, Kane was wrestling's newest sensation, not because he was particularly skilled, but because he'd mastered the art of being loud. He had 3 million followers across platforms, most of them teenagers who confused his bravado for authenticity. Every day brought new videos. Derek deadlifting ridiculous weight with terrible form. Derek yelling motivational nonsense at the camera. Derek flexing in front of mirrors while announcing his own greatness. "Marcus, my man." Derek shouted, slapping the desk hard enough to make the coffee cups jump. I need the main floor cleared. Got some content to shoot. Demolisher needs space, you feel me? Marcus, a former Marine who'd seen more than his share of big egos, kept his voice level. Derek, we don't clear the floor for anyone. Everyone pays. Everyone shares the space. You know the rules. Derek's face flickered with irritation, but he covered it with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Yeah, I'm just playing with you. Big dog. But seriously, some of these people need to stay out of my shots. This is professional work here. Chuck watched this exchange from his corner, saying nothing. He'd been around long enough to recognize the type. Loud exterior, fragile interior. The kind of person who needed constant validation, who couldn't exist without an audience, who confused attention with respect. Derek made his way to the center of the gym, like a peacock in a chicken coop, his camera crew flanking him. He began an elaborate warm-up that was clearly designed more for content than for actual preparation. Every movement was exaggerated, performed for the lens. He'd flex, hold the pose, make sure the angles were right, then move to the next exercise. Come on, guys, he yelled to no one in particular. This is how you do it. This is what dedication looks like. You see this? Most people don't have this drive. The regulars exchanged glances, but mostly ignored him. They'd seen his type before. The gym was full of people who actually put in the work day after day, without fanfare. Derek's performance was almost sad, like watching someone try too hard at a party. But Derek needed engagement the way fish need water. Being ignored was worse than being hated. So he started to poke, to prod, to find someone who'd give him a reaction. Hey, old-timer in the corner. Yeah, you with the white hair. You planning on doing any real work today? Or you just here to take up space? Chuck, hitting the heavy bag with methodical precision, gave no indication he'd heard. His focus was internal, his breathing controlled. Each strike carried intention, but not anger. Derek's ego, already inflated, didn't like being ignored. He walked closer, his camera crew following eagerly. Yo, Grandpa! I'm talking to you. What are you even doing here? Isn't it past your bedtime? A few people in the gym stopped what they were doing. This was crossing a line. Marcus started to move from behind the desk, his face darkening, but Chuck gave him a subtle shake of the head. It was fine. Chuck finished his combination on the heavy bag, then turned to face Derek with calm, steady eyes. Just getting a workout in, son. Same as you. The word son landed like a slap. Derek's face flushed. Son? Son? Do you know who I am? I'm Derek Kane, the Demolisher. I got 3 million followers. I'm the future of this sport. That's good, Chuck said evenly. Hard work pays off. It was sincere without sarcasm, and that made it worse for Derek. He'd wanted conflict, confrontation, anger he could feed on. Instead, he got polite acknowledgement from a man who clearly couldn't care less about his follower count. Hard work. Derek laughed, but it sounded forced. Old man, you look like you're moving in slow motion. What are you, like 80? 90? You probably need a nap after 3 push-ups. 70, Chuck said. And I'm doing fine, thanks for asking. 70. Derek seized on this, turning to his camera. Yo, guys, check this out. We got a fossil over here trying to relive his glory days. Probably telling war stories about the good old days when men were men, right? Old-timer? Chuck smiled just a little. The good old days are now, if you know how to live right. Every day you wake up is a glory day. This philosophical response completely missed Derek's wavelength. He wanted heat, drama, viral moments. Instead, he was getting Hallmark card wisdom from a senior citizen who wouldn't take the bait. You know what? Derek's voice took on a cruel edge. I bet you're one of those guys who thinks he's tough because of what you did 30 years ago. Newsflash, Grandpa. Nobody cares about the past. This is my era. Guys like you? You're just taking up space that belongs to the young and hungry. The gym had gone quiet now. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how this would play out. Chuck turned back to his heavy bag, resuming his workout, not out of fear or retreat, but simply because he had nothing to prove to this young man. But Derek, desperate for the confrontation his ego craved, couldn't let it go. What's the matter? Too scared to respond? That's what I thought. All you old guys are the same. All talk, no action. Bet you couldn't go 3 minutes in a ring with me. Hell, I bet you couldn't go 30 seconds. Chuck stopped, not suddenly, but with that same economical movement that defined everything he did. He turned back to Derek, and for the first time, there was something different in his eyes. Not anger, not pride, just a quiet assessment, like a chess player looking 3 moves ahead. "Young man," Chuck said, his voice still calm but carrying more weight now. "You seem to have a lot of energy this morning. That's good. Energy is important. But you know what's more important." Derek crossed his arms, smirking. "What's that, Gramps? Wisdom? Respect? All that old-school nonsense." "Direction," Chuck said. "Energy without direction is just noise. And, brother, you're making a lot of noise." Derek's face went red. The camera was still rolling, and he could feel his tough guy image requiring him to escalate. He couldn't back down now. "You know what?" Derek stepped closer, into Chuck's space, using his height and bulk to intimidate. "I'm calling you out, old man. Right here, right now. Let's see what you got. Unless you're too chicken." Marcus finally intervened, stepping between them. "Derek, that's enough. Chuck's not here to play your games. Stay out of this, Marcus." Derek was fully committed now, his voice reaching that fever pitch that told everyone watching this had stopped being performance and become something real. "This old man's been disrespecting me since I walked in here. I'm just asking him to back it up." Chuck sighed, and in that sigh was a weariness of man who'd seen this movie too many times. Young guys with something to prove. Loud guys who confused aggression with strength. He'd been a young man himself once, full of fire and pride, and life had taught him that there was a better way to be strong. But every generation needed to learn its own lessons, and Derek Kane was clearly not going to learn his through words. "Tell you what," Chuck said finally, "you seem pretty set on this. So how about this? You and me, 3 minutes, just grappling. Nothing serious. Just to see what you've got. That work for you?" Derek's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. This was perfect. This was content gold. 3 minutes? Oh, man, I'll have you tapping out in 30 seconds. But sure, let's make it official. Marcus shook his head. "Chuck, you don't have to do this." Chuck laid a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "It's all right, brother. Sometimes the only way through a storm is straight ahead. Set a timer. 3 minutes. Just grappling, no strikes." The center of the gym cleared quickly. The regulars formed a loose circle, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. They all respected Chuck, but Derek was young, huge, and trained. This seemed like a terrible mismatch. Chuck removed his shoes and stepped onto the mat, moving with that same unhurried grace. He rolled his shoulders once, cracked his neck gently, and settled into a loose, balanced stance. His face was peaceful, almost meditative. Derek, meanwhile, was putting on a show. He flexed, roared, beat his chest like a gorilla, making sure his camera caught every angle. He was feeding off the attention, the certainty that he was about to humiliate this old man. "You ready to go night-night, Grandpa?" Derek sneered. "Last chance to back out." Chuck just smiled. "I'm ready when you are, son." Marcus stood at the edge of the mat, his phone in hand. "All right, 3 minutes. Keep it clean. On my mark, go." Derek exploded forward with the speed and power of a freight train, arms spread wide, intending to overwhelm Chuck through pure size and aggression. But Chuck wasn't there. With minimal movement, Chuck pivoted smoothly to the side, redirecting Derek's energy past him like water flowing around a rock. Derek, committed to his charge, stumbled forward, surprised by the absence of resistance. "Come on, old man. Stand and fight." Derek spun around, annoyed. They circled each other for a moment. Derek was already breathing harder than he should be, amped up on adrenaline and ego. Chuck's breathing remained steady, his eyes focused but not fixed, taking in Derek's whole posture, reading the tension in his shoulders, the imbalance in his stance. Derek lunged again, this time reaching for a collar tie, trying to use his height and strength to control Chuck's head and neck. For a moment, he got it, his massive hand clamping down on the back of Chuck's neck. "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about." Derek yelled, trying to knee Chuck's midsection. But Chuck's head moved just enough, his hips shifted just right, and suddenly Derek's iron grip felt like he was holding smoke. Chuck slipped the hold, ducked under Derek's arm, and ended up behind him. Before Derek could fully process what happened, Chuck had control of his wrist, applying just enough pressure to make Derek's shoulder socket light up with discomfort. Derek yanked his arm free through sheer strength, spinning around with a wild backhand. Chuck leaned away from it, the blow missing his face by inches. "That's it," Chuck said quietly. "That's your technique?" The words hit Derek harder than any punch could have. This was supposed to be easy. Instead, Derek was the one off balance, the one wasting energy, the one looking sloppy. "Shut up." Derek charged again, abandoning whatever technical training he had in favor of pure aggression. He managed to grab Chuck in a bear hug, lifting him off the ground with a roar of triumph. "Got you now, old man." For 1 second, Derek thought he'd won. He had the old man in the air, helpless, about to be slammed to the mat. His camera was rolling. Victory was his. But Chuck's body, even at 70, remembered what his first judo instructor had taught him when he was just a teenager. When your opponent lifts you, they've given you leverage. In midair, Chuck hooked his leg behind Derek's knee, twisted his hips, and used Derek's own lifting momentum against him. Physics took over. Derek, suddenly off balance, felt the world tilt. They both went down, but Chuck controlled the fall. He landed on top, in a dominant position, his weight distributed perfectly to neutralize Derek's size advantage. Before Derek could even process what happened, Chuck had isolated Derek's arm and had him locked in an arm bar that was textbook perfect. The pressure was immediate and unmistakable. Derek's elbow joint was fully extended, Chuck's hips controlling it, the leverage giving Chuck the ability to break Derek's arm with just a few more inches of pressure. "Tap out," Chuck said calmly. "This isn't worth your career." Derek's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, pain, confusion, and finally, rage. The idea of tapping out to a 70-year-old man in front of his camera crew, in front of all these witnesses, it was unthinkable. "No!" Derek gritted his teeth, trying to muscle his way out. Chuck increased the pressure just slightly. "Son, pride isn't worth a broken arm. This is over. Tap." "I said no." Derek roared, still fighting, still refusing. Chuck could have ended it right there. One sharp motion, and Derek's elbow would be useless for months. But that wasn't what this was about. This wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about teaching a lesson, and you can't teach someone who's in the hospital. So Chuck did something Derek would never have done in his position. He released the hold. He simply let go and stepped back, rising to his feet, leaving Derek on the mat, gasping. "Get up," Chuck said. "We still got time on the clock." Derek scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of humiliation and fury. His arm throbbed where Chuck had been applying pressure. His ego, more fragile than his elbow, had been crushed. And the worst part? The old man had let him go. The mercy was more devastating than any submission would have been. "You got lucky," Derek snarled, his voice shaking. "That was luck." "Maybe," Chuck said. "You want to try again?" Derek did. Over and over for the next 2 minutes, Derek tried. He used every trick he knew, every move he'd learned, every bit of strength his massive frame could generate. And every single time, Chuck was somewhere else, doing something different, staying 3 steps ahead. Chuck swept Derek's leg and put him on his back. Chuck countered a takedown attempt and ended up in mount position. Chuck escaped a rear choke attempt and reversed it into a position where Derek was face down, helpless, with Chuck's knee in his back. Each time, Chuck let him up. Each time, Chuck gave him another chance. And each time made it more obvious to everyone watching. This wasn't a fight. This was a lesson. A master giving a free class to a student who badly needed it. When the timer finally hit 3 minutes, Derek was on his knees, gasping for air, his expensive workout gear soaked with sweat. He'd been taken down 7 times. He'd been submitted 4 times. He hadn't completed a single successful technique. Chuck stood over him, barely breathing hard, not a hair out of place. "You all right, son?" Derek couldn't answer. His throat was tight with something worse than physical exhaustion. His entire self-image, his whole identity, had just been dismantled by a man who looked like he should be home taking afternoon naps. The gym was silent. Derek's camera crew had captured everything. Every failed attempt, every easy reversal, every moment of humiliation. Chuck offered his hand to help Derek up. Derek stared at it, then at Chuck's face, searching for mockery or triumph. There was none, just a calm, steady gaze that held no judgment, no pride, just simple human decency. Derek slapped the hand away and stumbled to his feet on his own, his face a mess of emotions he didn't have a maturity to process. Without a word, he grabbed his gym bag and stormed toward the door, his camera crew scrambling to follow. "Derek," Chuck called out. Derek stopped but didn't turn around. "There's no shame in losing," Chuck said, "only in not learning from it." Derek stood there for a moment, his shoulders shaking, and for a second it looked like he might turn around, might say something, might begin the hard work of becoming better. But his ego, even bruised and bleeding, wouldn't let him. He pushed through the door and was gone. The gym erupted in applause and murmurs. People crowded around Chuck, offering congratulations, expressing amazement. But Chuck waved them off gently, already moving back to his corner, back to his heavy bag, back to the simple work he'd come here to do. "I've changed how I train," Derek said. "How I think about everything, really. I'm trying to do it right now, for the right reasons. I'm teaching kids, trying to help them learn proper technique and sportsmanship. I was wondering if I could train here sometimes. I don't want special treatment. I just want to be around people who take this seriously. If you'd rather I didn't, I completely understand." Chuck picked up a towel and regarded Derek with that same penetrating calm. "You know what I see when I look at you now?" Derek shook his head, afraid of the answer. "I see someone who got knocked down and chose to get back up better than they fell. That's rare. Most people get knocked down and either stay down or get back up exactly the same, learning nothing. You did the hard work. You changed." "I didn't have much choice," Derek said. "You showed me who I really was, and I didn't like what I saw." "No," Chuck corrected gently. "I showed you who you were pretending to be. Who you really are, that's what you're discovering now." "Thank you, sir. You're welcome here any time," Chuck said. "Train hard. Train honest. Treat people with respect. And Derek, you can call me Chuck." Over the following months, Derek became a regular at Iron Legacy Gym. Not the Derek who'd swaggered in with cameras and attitude, but someone quieter, more focused, more real. He trained hard, listened more than he talked, and showed the kind of respect that comes from genuine humility. And sometimes, when Chuck had time, he'd work with Derek on technique, not making a big deal about it, just 2 people sharing knowledge, one teaching, one learning, both growing in the process. The other regulars saw the change. They saw how Derek helped newer members, how he encouraged people who were struggling, how he'd stay after his own workout to help others. They saw him becoming part of the community, rather than performing for it. They saw what redemption looked like in real time. Not the Hollywood version where one good deed erases all past wrongs, but the actual difficult, day-by-day version where you prove through consistent action that you've changed. Years later, Derek would tell the story himself sometimes. when his middle school wrestlers got too cocky or started disrespecting their opponents. The worst part, he'd tell his students, wasn't getting beat. I'd lost matches before. The worst part was realizing that I'd been so loud, so arrogant, so desperate for attention that I'd become the kind of person I wouldn't have respected. Mr. Norris didn't just beat me physically. He held up a mirror, and I hated what I saw. "So what did you do?" one of the kids would ask. "I made a choice," Derek would say. "Same choice you all have to make every day. I could either defend who I'd been or become who I wanted to be. I could either blame Mr. Norris for embarrassing me or thank him for caring enough to teach me. I could either let that moment define me as a failure or use it as a foundation to build something better. Which did you choose?" Derek would smile. "Well, I'm here, aren't I? Teaching you. Trying to help you learn the things I had to learn the hard way. That's my choice. Every day, that's my choice." So what's the moral of this story? What's the lesson we're supposed to take away from that morning in the Dallas gym? Here it is. Humility isn't weakness. Quiet confidence isn't lack of skill. Age and experience aren't liabilities. And the most dangerous person in any room is often the one who has nothing to prove to anyone. Real strength doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't require validation from strangers. It doesn't demand attention or respect. It earns both through consistent action and genuine competence. Real strength can afford to be gentle because it knows exactly how strong it is. Real power can afford to be kind because it has no need to dominate others. The world is full of Derek Canes, people who confuse volume for value, who mistake attention for accomplishment, who think that seeming impressive is the same as being formidable. And there's nothing wrong with ambition or confidence or even showmanship. But when it becomes your entire identity, when your sense of self depends on applause of others, when you need to make others feel small so you can feel big, you've built your house on sand. Derek chose to be remade. He chose growth over ego, substance over performance, reality over image. And in doing so, he became someone worth knowing, someone worth respecting, someone who could pass on a lesson he'd learned. As for Chucknorris, he's still showing up at that gym 3 times a week, still doing his work with quiet precision, still treating everyone with respect, still being exactly who he is without apology or explanation. Because when you spent 7 decades mastering your craft and yourself, when you've earned your peace through hard-won wisdom, you don't need anything from anyone except the chance to keep growing, keep learning, keep being a little better than you were yesterday. That's the real power. That's the real strength. And it's available to anyone willing to do the hard work of becoming it. Remember this. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. The person seeking the most attention is rarely the most accomplished. And the one who needs to prove something is never as dangerous as the one who has nothing left to prove. Choose substance over flash. Choose humility over arrogance. Choose growth over ego. And understand that real strength whispers. It doesn't need to shout, because it knows that when the time comes, when it really matters, action will speak louder than words ever could. Chucknorris didn't need to humiliate Derek Kane that morning. He needed to teach him. And the lesson stuck not because Chuck was cruel, but because he was kind enough to care, skilled enough to demonstrate, and wise enough to know that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the truth, even when it hurts. Be more like Chucknorris. The world has enough Derek Canes already.